Next, lightning round question, secret sauce. What's your secret sauce for creating executive engagement programs that build loyalty and drive growth, especially for that early stage founder? What would be the secret sauce you would recommend?
To me, a lot of it has always come down to relevance and thinking about relevance and what's in it for them. Why would someone want to spend time, and how is that investing in their success? We know we want them in the room. We know we want to build relationships with them, but why do they want this? I saw this play out a lot with the CFO. People would be like, we've got to get the CFO. And we got to get the CFO because the CFO is holding up our decision-making process. And I would always have to turn that on them to be like, but why does the CFO want to spend any time with you?
Yeah, right.
And that's the reality, is like, you have to answer that very difficult question.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes we would have to take it at a completely different angle to say, how do we bring together a group of CFOs and help them in an elevated conversation that has nothing to do with us as a brand other than being the catalyst to bring them together?
So can you just double click on that a bit? This idea of how do you lead a conversation versus facilitate a conversation? Because I think it's very different. And I think in your role, when you were doing this at Salesforce and dealing with people like George Bush, there must have been a moment where you're like, oh my God, how am I going to help lead a conversation versus facilitate a conversation? What's the key to really bringing the magic of that moment to light?
Those always sound really fancy, and the list of all the people that you get to work with. But a lot of the time what I was doing was behind the scenes for people like you to say, hey, look, you're about to have this conversation. I've prepared you as best I can. But at the end of the day, it's the most interesting dinner party that someone's ever been invited to. And so you want to thank them. You want to make sure that they all know who's in the room. You've got a special guest. Start off with a couple of questions, but this is for everybody, and then get out of the way. That's the key, is just let them converse. Don't worry about trying to hold one giant conversation. Just make it a special opportunity that they're all able to converse and learn, not only from, if you've invested in the likes of a former president, but even in just hearing from their peers and from you, and just sharing truly, authentically, a peer-to-peer level conversation.
I think one thing I'd offer, so I taught for a while, and I remember thinking about when I was teaching literature at the time, was that the conversation always has at least two levels. It's what's being said and how it's being said. And I remember when I was teaching, when you're trying to facilitate a conversation of people participating, you're sensitive to who's talking, when they're talking, who's talked too much. You're trying to remember what people have said earlier in the conversation to bring it back. And I do think that's relevant for these types of conversations as well, is you as the facilitator are trying to make sure everyone's participating without dominating. You have a point of view, of course you want to share it, but you brought all these people here to get out from them and get them connected. And some people are more introverted. They may be less willing to engage, they're reticent to be in the mix, and other people are going to be over-indexing the other way. And I think that's the other real skill, is how do you manage the interactions of people with big egos and who want to be heard versus those that are wicked smart, that they take a second to get into the mix. Do you have any ideas or suggestions to help people become better at facilitating the two levels of the conversation?
Two thoughts popped to mind, and they're 100% what you said, which is being aware of who has spoken and who hasn't, who's maybe dominating, and actively having to, even if it's uncomfortable, manage that. Mm-hmm. But the second thing, and this is so simple, is you sit at a table, let's say there's 15 of you, is a great conversation. It doesn't hurt to break early. It's actually great to break early. And people often are like, oh, wait, but we got to go the whole hour. No, you don't. Go to 50 minutes. Because you actually, for a number of things, you could be stuck next to someone that you didn't necessarily want to be. You're like, great, got it. But boy, I really want to meet that person over there. So oftentimes, if we were doing this around, say, dinner, we didn't serve dessert at the table. We said, stand up, move around, mix. It gives more of that organic opportunity. So where do you create those organic spaces, whether it's at a meal or other places, to just allow people some time to mingle, that they're not feeling that they need to be shuttled out quickly, and that they can connect with some of the others.
Yeah, I love that. There was a woman, Joanne Bradford, who was an incredible salesperson at MSN when I was there, and she would do everyone swap between each serving. So it was powerful, and I think to your point, it got
Restaurant didn't love it, but I'm sure
right. Yeah, totally. Okay.